The Arabian Racehorse Podcast with Debbie Burt.
Welcome to another edition of the Arabian Racing Podcast. We're joined again by Stephen Molyneux, live from Dubai. First off, we're going to have a look at our most recent race, the WAFBStallions.com Handicap Stakes run at Bath over a mile. Stephen, obviously this was your first chance to get to grips with a handicap for the season. And what did you think?
Yeah, hey, hi Debbie. I thought it was quite a competitive race, really. I know the eventual winning margin said there was 9.5 lengths from the second to the third horse, but I think for the most part of the race, it seemed competitive enough, and actually quite nice to see a lowly rated horse come to the fore. It's never easy for them in handicaps, and for Bin Al Ree to win off, I think it was 47, beg your pardon, then. Well, that was a pretty good effort from Peter Hammersley, and as you predicted, just a much happier horse back on the turf.
Right, and we talked about that in the previous podcast. Pete had said, as we discussed, that he felt that he'd be a happier horse in not just on turf, but on a more open race course, which Bath certainly is, and it certainly was very windy that day. So that's another thing to bear in mind. We talked about headwinds last time at Wolverhampton, and there was certainly a strong wind at Bath. And I think, we also talked last week about how his rating has dropped when previously he was rated, I think he got up to about 66, 67 on the turf. And of course, he hasn't run on the turf for nearly 2 years now. So I guess it's no surprise, that he's found better conditions to suit him this time.
No, exactly. I think he was fourth off 62 on Dubai Day in that 0 to 75, which is fiercely competitive. So yeah, any horse eventually reaches their limit or reaches their level, I suppose, more is the point. And Bin Al Ree did that the other week at Bath, and there was a good performance. The horse in second, Jamarat, had only had the 2 starts and had been was making a handicap debut off 67, and I thought she probably travelled better than the winner, and looked for the most part as if she was going to go and win. But Bin Al Ree, perhaps just that bit more experience, eventually fought off Jamarat, and I thought there was positives enough to be taken from the next 4 home, really, which is why the exaggerated winning distance of 9.5 lengths was perhaps a bit flattering on the day. Zayn Zyperian is still improving at a lowly level and not had too much racing. I thought Gurko de Turnell, who's actually entered in the maiden at Chepstow, I thought that one made quite a bold mid-race move before those exertions told late in the day. So improvement to come from that one. I thought Seraphim Forte was maybe just a bit intimidated between horses when the pace picked up, and will be better for the run. And even Al Montfort, to a degree, I know he's more exposed, and the angle of him going well fresh was perhaps a little bit negated by the drop-in trip. He never really seemed that comfortable back over the mile. So that's probably the reason I've left. I think I dropped Al Montfort a couple of pounds, but the reason I left those 3 off their current marks was because I think if you were to run that race maybe in 2 or 3 weeks' time, where 1 or 2 of them had the benefit of a run, then you'd probably see a more equal result.
We talked a couple of weeks ago off camera about your views on maiden races. You were saying to me that you thought perhaps that one option could be to scrap maiden races altogether and start everybody off with the same sort of handicap mark. Perhaps you'd like to expand on that.
Yeah, it's probably quite a left field suggestion. They do it in Hong Kong for any horse that's starting off. I mean, they do have what's called Griffin races, which are for the juveniles, so the 3-year-old in Arabian terms. But then any older horse debutant will start off a handicap mark. I think it's 52 over there. And quite often you're going to get anomalies, such as, a horse go way back in the end of the 1990s, a horse called Silent Witness, who won God knows how many races on the trot. He ended up, he started off, in a handicap of 52. So there are quite often going to be some horses that are very well handicapped first time out. But, if I don't know, it's more to help out the the lower grade handicapper, I guess. I think as we stood at the start of the season, going to the end of June or whenever it is, the conditions book has been done too. I think a vast percent, well, a good percentage of the races were maidens or 3-year-old only races or a conditions event. Can't remember the percentage off the top of my head, but it was maybe 5 or 6 of the 14 races were supposed to be maidens or 3-year-old only races. So you'd have to sort of work out in your head where the rating should lie. In my head, it would be somewhere between 65 and 75 as the starting off point for any horse making its debut. But I guess, I don't know, it's whether that would infuriate the trainers of horses, somewhere between 60 and 70. Do they feel as though that they're going to be up against it, taking on a debutant in a handicap? These Shadwell bred horses could be much better than that. But, experience would come into it as well. We saw with the race at Bath, for example, I think, as we've already mentioned, Bin Al Rhee, a prime example of a more experienced horse seeing off a horse who in time is likely to be much better and was already rated as such. So I don't know, it was just to give horses more opportunities. As I said, at the end of the day, any horse population, only really 20% of that horse population is capable of winning a maiden, whether it's thoroughbred or Arabian. So you're basically framing races for 20% of the horse population. As we saw at Wolverhampton, the front two came clear. It's hard to imagine anything else in behind in that race turning up in a maiden and winning it next time, unless they were taking on each other again. So I don't know, it was just a thought really that if you wanted to make it more competitive, and at the end of the day, I think the ARO want to appeal to the TV audience. As I sit here, neither of the races have so far been live on Sky Sports Racing, unfortunately, so far this season. And it's only really the handicaps and the competitive races that bookmakers are interested in. So it was just a thought, but I'm sure trainers of maidens want to give them that experience in that race before they step into handicaps.
Well, it's certainly an interesting point of view. And just to clarify, for anyone who's a bit concerned about Sky Sports Racing, they did certainly show a recording of the Bath race about 5 minutes afterwards. And I think the intention is that as the season moves on and it fits in with the programme, that we will return to slotting in. To be fair, I'm not privy to the negotiations behind the scenes to do with that, but I think it is the intention that we, as the season goes on, we should be more included into the regular programme of racing. Well, I'm sure that view about the maidens being handicapped will ruffle a few feathers of the people lower down the scale, but I don't know whether it's any different really in everybody starting off at level weights near enough to their age group in a maiden anyway. You're always going to it's always going to be an advantage to the horses with the greater ability, I suppose, to a lesser degree. At the end
of the day, we're rating them after one run anyway. For the most part, that one run is just a box ticking exercise. They have to have that one run, or in some cases 2 runs if they don't show anything in that one run. So look, you're going to get horses, say the mark is 70, you're going to get horses that are nowhere near capable of winning off 70, but then you've got horses nowhere near capable of winning a maiden, yet we still make them run in that race. And from what I've seen of the quality over the last 5 years in particular, we don't have a massive amount of horses now in that 80 to 100 bracket. And if they are in that bracket, it's probably been a case of over a period of time rather than after 1 or 2 runs. So if they do turn up in a handicap after 1 run and win off 70, on their first run and win off 70, then, I just can rate them that bit higher on the back of that 1 run. And I think if people are concerned that races are going to be oversubscribed, I don't see that's a problem for us just now. But if there is a case of, I don't know, the safety limit at Wolverhampton being 12 and 14 get entered, then maybe you start bringing in rules whereby a certain trainer can only have 2 runners each, for example, because at the end of the day, it is going to be Phil Collington and James Owen with the multiple representation. So they have 2 runners each. Everyone else gets in, and then Phil and James can then fill the field up. So it's not going to take a run away from the horses down the bottom of the handicap, but it would give, I think, more options to those maiden races, or to the debutants, to the newcomers, and probably make the racing more competitive as a whole.
Well, it's certainly a point worth considering, and something that we might come back to over the course of the season. As we now know, the Chepstow Maiden had to be abandoned due to waterlogging on the track. However, hopefully that will be rescheduled later in the season. This week, Arrow published the international racing calendar, which outlines the entry details for the races that are open to international runners this season. With 4 group races worth a total of over £500,000 and a further 3 conditions races to the total value of £10,000, in the circumstances with racing, and I think more importantly, the opportunities for sponsors have been reduced, I think that's a very decent amount of prize money. Obviously, for more details, they're available on the Arrow website. Also, I learned this week that the race that I sponsor through this magazine, the ArabianRacehorse.com International Stakes, which is going to be run at Newbury on the 22nd of June, has had its prize money boosted and is now worth £3,000. I'd like to thank Arrow very much for organising the extra funding for that race. In addition, I think also, as I'm supplying an original bronze trophy and mementos to the winning connections, it actually takes the value of the race nearer to the £4,000 mark. Today, entries open for our next race, the Al Sawadi Beach Handicap at Chelmsford City. To be run in a week's time, it's the first of 5 races that are sponsored by the Royal Cavalry Oman. When you join us next time to preview the race, our podcast will also take a look back at their involvement with Arrow over the last few seasons. Thank you for watching, and see you all again next week.